Today I'm going to share the two most important, most impactful tips I received on the serve that helped me get my serve from that 90-mile-per-hour zone to about the 120. So as a junior and being close to 6'2", I've always had a relatively big serve, but I was really having a hard time getting out of that like 108, 112 miles per hour. And these two tips really helped kind of just get it the extra mile. Now, think of serving a lot like in baseball. Like if you know anything about pitching, like most professional baseball pitchers can throw 90 miles per hour, you know, some up into the 100 miles per, you know, right at towards 100 miles per hour. But like right when we get to that 100 mile per hour threshold is where it gets really, really difficult, right? Like throwing 100 miles per hour, throwing over 100 miles per hour is left for just a select few. Well, serving, it's kind of what we look on the broad scale of things. At most levels, from like 4.0 to 5.0, most players can hit 90 miles per hour, and a lot of them can get into the 3-digit mark. But it's really getting that serve moving from 100 to 110, and then that 110 to 120 is where it becomes a really potent weapon, right? So these are the tips that helped me. Tip number one is all about where the highest contact point is that you can achieve. And this has to do with the rotational axis. The highest your contact can be is directly above the rotational axis. So in layman's terms, is I'm working through the motion of my serve. In order to get the arm fully extended to contact, it has to be directly below the rotational axis, all right? So from here, this is going to be the highest I can make contact. That's it. It's as high as I can make contact. Sure, I can jump, right? Like, but this is directly below the rotational axis. So the rotational axis is like through the serve, can come through here, can go through here, can go through here. So for a lot of players, when their arm moves too far off to the dominant side, they're not at the highest point of contact directly below that rotational axis. All right. So what we want to make sure that we're doing, I know this sounds complicated, but it was simplified by my coach by thinking about simply getting contact above the right shoulder. All right. So if you think about contact occurring above the right shoulder as you're going to hit, if I'm making contact here, you can see I can line it up with the right shoulder. And then from there, if I want to jump, that's fine. I can raise that contact point. But this is the key. And so for a lot of times what I would find is that I was getting too much slice on my serve. And this would happen because, you know, maybe an errant toss to some degree. I did change my toss from working more parallel to the baseline to being more at a true 45, which made this easier. But when I started to think about where the ball toss was in relationship to my right shoulder, it became a lot more consistent in getting that contact point to where my arm was fully extended. All right. This helped an absolute ton at making that consistent contact and making sure that I wasn't making contact with my arm slightly bent, but completely fully extended. All right, and tip number two was about lowering the toss. I was a huge Pete Sampras fan, right? I wanted the full lag where it worked all the way around and then that toss up nice and high. The problem is that I didn't consistently get up there to get it. And the higher your toss, the more difficult it is to time. By lowering the toss, what also happens is that you take away the ability for the opponent to anticipate the serve. There's less to read, and I believe it also helps with racket head speed. Lowering the toss allows the serve not to pause. What we don't want to do in this, it works for some, and if it works for you, that's totally okay. But if you're trying to increase speed on the serve, you don't want a long pause. So what I would have an issue doing as a young man is that I would get here and then I would pause. But then my racket would have to pick up so much speed to come through and operate. And that just was a problem for me. So by thinking like, hey, I only need to toss as high as my arm and racket will extend, it sped my serve up and it picked up the momentum, the speed of it. So I'm not talking about my legs or anything else. Like, yes, 50% of power is going to come from your legs. Note it from loading, not jumping. Jumping just helps with trajectory, maybe adds 5 miles per hour, but it comes from loading. But those are all fundamentals. If you're having issues with those, then that's something to investigate. You got to put some time in this. But for higher level players, they're just kind of looking for that little bit of a twitch on their serve, a little bit of an adjustment. These are the two big ones. Make sure that you're making contact above the hitting shoulder, and make sure that you're not tossing too high. Make sure you're dropping the toss so that it's only as high as your arm and your racket fully extended. Now, I get asked in the comments all the time when we do serve videos, how fast are you serving, Nate? So at 46, I don't use a flat serve. I'm not hitting a flat serve on every first serve. I'm not putting it into practice as I was when I was competing all the time. And that is because at my age, what I find is that typically the spins, the slice, the kickers are more beneficial for setting up the points, especially in doubles. But in singles, it's something where I want a serve plus one. But what I like to do is use the flat serve as a changeup. A lot of body serves, or if somebody's just leaving an egregious amount of space open, then yeah, of course, I'm going to go for the ace. So with that being said, can I hit 120? Sure. Consistently? No. I just don't hit it enough. So I'm completely content hitting something in the 112, 115 range if I'm hitting my spots. It's about hitting spots. But if you are a young athlete and you're working towards maybe playing in college, you're on the junior tour, consistently being able to deliver a big first serve is really important because the returns have gotten so good. The returns are better now than when I was competing, back from, gracious, 1992 to 2002, right? The returns were good, but now it's like no one really misses returns. So really getting some beef on that serve is important. All right, so get out there, give these two tips a try. I think, especially with thinking about where the contact point is, it's going to help you a lot. Because when we think about tossing, I almost think, especially in pressure situations, when we start really focusing about where the toss is located, it can kind of get things rigid, right? Those nerves suddenly become very apparent in the hand, the forearm, and the shoulder. But if you think about where you're locating the toss, where it's above that hitting shoulder, you can almost envision like a boxer trying to throw in and line up that shoulder. And I think that really helps with the contact point and kind of helps correct those yippy tosses that we get. And then shorting the toss, absolutely speed things up, less moving parts, less can go wrong. Keep it short, go after, and go get it. Hope these tips help a ton. I'll see you next time.